is what we refer to as historical research. So we start by looking at what's been published, all the peer-reviewed articles that have been published on a particular topic, whatever it is we're looking to make a product for. Now this usually encompasses somewhere between 1 and 200 different studies. So we'll look through the research. This takes several days, a week or so, just to find all the research that's published on that topic, specifically those that talk about plants, the botanicals, vitamins, minerals, other dietary supplement ingredients. We'll then spend the time to read all of that research. And we're looking here for things that talk about the safety of the ingredients, the active components within them. We look for stuff that looks at synergies or additive benefits by combining one or more of these ingredients. And we'll take all of this research and catalog it and organize it in a number of different ways so that we can look at it by ingredient, by function, by how it affects or the mechanism that it works within the body. That altogether takes usually around 2 months just to kind of figure out what are our options. Then we move into what we refer to as a tentative formula. And this is really a way where we play a lot of what if. So we've identified a dozen, maybe 2 potential ingredients in here. And we'll look at which ones we can put together, how much we have to put in to get to the doses that were studied and found to be effective. We'll look at those synergies again and see, can we put those 2 in? And we'll also do some quick looking to see, are these available? Can we buy them commercially? We'll kind of number different scenarios to see where can we get a good balance of what we think are the best ingredients that are going to work the best together and that are going to be something that also will work internationally. Because we have a global company, so we have to look at which ingredients will go into the most of our international markets. So then we get into trying to narrow down what are our options for ingredients. And so we'll look again at all of those we've identified and see which of these can we get commercially. How easy is it going to be to get them? Are they something that only one company makes and they only make it once a year? Or is it something that's relatively easy to come by? At this point, we'll also set up the first of a series of specifications. So we'll decide, as we've read the research, this ingredient needs to have these components in it at these levels, and it needs to have maybe not some other components. So some things that may have been identified as unsafe or potentially dangerous, we'll make sure that we set a specification to limit or make sure that those things are absent from the materials. So this specification then is what we use going forward to judge all of these materials. And so now we're going to whittle things down just a little bit further. Now we'll look at who actually supplies these materials. And we'll decide who it is we want to buy from. We usually will come up with 2 to 3 suppliers for each of these ingredients. We'll take that specification that we set up, we'll hand it out to them and say, does your material meet these specifications? Now we'll look again at the price of the material, its potency, and all the other things we kind of talked about in that research side of things. And so now we've identified which of the materials we're going to go with and who we're going to buy them from. Now we get into the first set of testing. So those 2 or 3 suppliers that we identified, we'll ask them to send us a sample of their material. It then goes into our quality lab, and Anna, who comes up after me, will talk to you about some of the testing that happens there. But this is the first set of testing that occurs as we develop a new product. And so all of those materials that we choose will be sent out for this testing. And depending on the number of tests and the complexity of those tests, this could be a week, it could be 2 months that it takes to get all of that testing done. Assuming that all the tests come back and they meet the specifications that we set up, now we have the materials we can work with. So then we move into the fun part of it. We could refer to this as kind of the benchtop phase. And so we've got all the different powders and whatnot that we've decided we're going to use. We'll go through and do a series of tests on those powders to see how they behave. Now, powders are kind of a complex thing. Now, liquids, they flow pretty readily. You get some that are sticky and maybe a little thick or thin. But powders, they stick to each other. They have different shapes. They have static charges and other things which make them a little bit tricky to work with. And so we will test all of these things to see, do any of these powders pose a problem for us when it comes time to actually go to manufacture? So we do all these tests. We'll look at them individually. We'll look at them blended up. We'll make sure that as we blend them all together, they're going to fit in the capsule or the tablet or the stick pack, whatever we've decided on as the delivery form. We'll make sure that that blend will actually fit. If not, we'll adjust things or change the way that we're going to deliver the product. This is also the phase where we do taste testing. So if it's going to be a consumable product, something you drink or chew, then we'll go through some pretty extensive taste tests. We'll run through a number of different flavor companies, looking at what they have to offer. We'll utilize what we call our super tasters. We have a group of employees that have gone through a series of checks and trainings to make sure that they can identify accurately the 5 major tastes, so sweet, sour, salty, bitter, all that, and that they can also accurately grade them. So we give them different strengths and they can put them in the correct order. So we use these people to help dial in the sweetness of the product. If we wanted to have a few sour notes, we'll make sure that it has the right level of sourness. We'll use them to make sure that it's not too bitter. And so with that group, we kind of fine-tune the flavor of the product, and then we'll expand that out to larger and larger groups to see, well, which flavors do most people like. And this is one point where some of you may have participated a number of years ago. I think it was about 3.5 years ago, we did a survey about Energy Go Sticks and asked for your preferences on flavor. And it came back that your number 1 choice was tropical. And that product came out a couple years ago, right? And there was a second choice, but I'm not going to tell you what that was. We'll let Dr. Parker talk about that in a minute. So this is our benchtop phase. Everything goes well. We'll move on to what we refer to as the R&D pilot, or this is a small-scale pilot. And here we use our pilot suite. If you had the opportunity to tour the plant or the offices in Sandy, you've perhaps seen our pilot suite. And we have some miniature-sized versions of the production equipment here. And so here's our opportunity to test it out in the blending and in the encapsulation phase to make sure that, once again, these powders are going to move through the machinery properly, that we can get a consistent fill, that we can run it fast enough, and that we're not going to have any issues in manufacturing. Assuming everything goes well, now we actually have a more or less bona fide product. And this is where the marketing group becomes heavily involved in the rest of the development. So here they will begin creating the label. They'll start writing the profile sheet and the Q&As, any of the marketing materials that you all receive, either through the Connect app or through our website. Their creation begins here. And once again, we have another specification here. And this one is for the label. Now, you may not be able to see it very well, but there are 12 signatures on that spec. That means every label is reviewed by at least 12 people from its creation before it ever goes onto a product. Any change to a label goes back through that entire process again. So you can see we take it seriously, making sure that best we can that we have accuracy in our labels. So while that is taking place, we've actually begun the production of the product. Now, it takes a number of weeks, a couple months usually, for us to get all the raw materials in order to do what we did in the pilot suite in a larger scale. So our first step is to do a production pilot. So this is a smaller version of a production run, but run on our production equipment. And so just like we did with the R&D pilot, we're looking for basically those same parameters, but now we're doing it on a machine that runs 2 or 3 times faster and produces about 10 times as many capsules. So there's a lot more room for things to get in the way and mess things up. So we want to make sure that we've tested it on the production equipment before we actually do a production run. Assuming everything goes well here, we're actually going to move into production. Again, we have to order the raw materials for this, and we order large quantities of them, usually in the tens to hundreds of kilos at a time. So the batch sizes that we typically produce range from the very smallest of around 3,000 or 5,000 bottles up to tens of thousands of bottles in an individual run. Sometimes the machine will be running for an entire day, maybe two, non-stop, in order to make one batch of product for us. So we'll blend these, they'll go into the encapsulation, and then they'll go into bottling. Are we done? No, we got one more very important step. After all that's done, the product is still considered naughty, so it gets quarantined. As soon as it comes off the production line, it's got its label on it, it goes into a special place in the warehouse where no one can touch it. And it sits there while it goes through additional testing. Now, we've tested all the raw materials. We made sure that they met our specifications and they were safe to use. We do that same series of tests again on the finished product. We want to make sure if there's any label claims, it says you're going to get 5 milligrams of zinc, perhaps, that there's actually 5 milligrams of zinc in every capsule. So that testing is done. There's a specification set up for the finished product that says it'll have that 5 milligrams in it. It won't have these ingredients in it. It won't have any bacteria. And it's going to be safe to consume, and that it meets all of the stringent standards that we've set up for the product. Again, that testing can take anywhere from a week to almost 2 months. And that product will sit in the warehouse until then. Now are we done? If all that testing goes well, the product passes and meets all of those specifications, it's now ready for launch. And then you all join us here at convention, and you get to enjoy what's taken us, if you remember that timeline, at least 1.5 years to make. Now that's, again, a very simplified version of it. I didn't talk about the research. So some of the things that you're going to see as we talk later on today, and again in the workshops on Friday, the research extends that timeline out. So some of the products that we launch have actually been in development for 2 or more years. With that, I thank you for your attention, and thank you again for joining us here at RISE 2019.
Ladies and gentlemen,